So let's bring in our panelists for this segment. The Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, Mr. Bismarck Rwani, joins us. Mr. Rwani, of course, is a member of the Presidential Economic Advisory Committee. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. Dr. Marcel Okeke, former Chief Economic Advisor at Zenith Bank, also joins us. Thank you so much. Welcome. I should have started with you, actually.
Exactly,
but okay, forgive me. Ms. Yandi Sadiku is, of course, the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigeria Investment Promotion Commission. Welcome. I hope you won't hold that against me, though.
I'll try not to.
Okay, maybe I'll compensate for that in the course of the conversation. But Mr. Rwani, as you always do every year, give us an idea of where we are and how we got here.
Okay. 1960, we started off this way. And we had a population of 45 million people, and we had 4 leaders. And what they said in 1960 was, Balewa, the Prime Minister, said Nigeria must at once play an active part in maintaining peace of the world and in preserving civilization. Chief Obafemi Awolowo said the government should guarantee social justice and personal security. Azikwe said Africans should cultivate spiritual balance, social regeneration, and become mentally emancipated. And Ahmadu Bello said Nigerians must have absolute liberty to practice his belief according to the dictates of his conscience. Now, the next slide here shows that Nigeria had 3 regions and 1 capital in Lagos. We had 4 airports. We had 2 universities, University of Ibadan and University of Nigeria in Nsukka. Our GDP was $4.1 billion, and our population was 45 million. At that time, the UK had a population of 65 million. Today, the UK has a population of 75 million, and we have a population estimated at 209 million. Inflation rate was 5.4%, and life expectancy of the average Nigerian was 37 years. Then, if you look at 11 parameters, 5 of them were positive between 1960 and today, and 6 of them were negative. First of all, GDP growth had gone from, it was 0.19 in 1960, it's now minus 5.4 if you annualize it for this year. The GDP was $4.1 billion. Today it's $459 billion, which is green. The income per capita per head was $92 per head that time. A dollar meant a lot that time. And today it's $2,200. That in October 1, 1960, according to Jide here, the price of a newspaper was 2 pence, but 2 pence is 4 kobo. Today I bought a newspaper at 250 naira. So what was 4 kobo in 1960 is 250 naira today, right? The population, of course, we've talked about that. Inflation was 5.4% that time. Now it's 13.2%, but food inflation is 16% today. Literacy rate was 55% of the people were literate, according to the data. Today, 59.6% are literate. The exchange rate was quite interesting. It was 71 kobo to $1. And today it's in the private market, it's about 470 naira to $1. So the newspaper of 4 kobo to 250 naira.
That explains it to some extent.
Right. Now, what is more interesting is that where were we compared to our peers? I will just use only one parameter. Whilst we had $92 per head, China had $89 per head. We were more prosperous than the Republic of China. Today, China has $10,000 per head. We have $2,000 per head. Singapore had $428 per head in 1960. Today, Singapore has $58,500. Life expectancy in Singapore at that time was 36. Today, life expectancy in Singapore is 85. Indonesia is even more interesting. They had almost 0 income per capita. Today, they have $4,200. Now, the transition and missed opportunities. 60 years, one thing is important, that in the 60 years, 30 years averagely or approximately was under direct military rule. That's 50% of the time. 25% of the time was under retired military rule. That is General Obasanjo and General Buhari. And then 25% of the time, we had pure civilians, the executive, Yar'Adua, Jonathan, and Yaradua Jonathan period. And before then, we had Balewa, and then we had the Shagari period. We've had this transition from conflict years to years of oil boom and to years of crony capitalism to where we are now trying to get things done. I think that has to be very clearly understood. Those are what we call the years of transition and missed opportunities. Delayed structural reforms, and the problems of Nigeria are well documented. The thing is that what are we going to do to get out of it? And we've been in the crisis before. We've had the crisis of 1974. We've had crisis of the years when Shagari was in government. We've had recessions and so on. But the problem is that have we learned the lessons from the past? Because those who fail to learn from history, they are bound to repeat it. The truth is that. So in summary, the problems are today multidimensional poverty, debt, and low investment. Of all of these things, the most important one is the low level of investment, because that would trigger, and I'm happy that Iran is here to talk about it. But you can see that if you look at the shared prosperity and misery map of Nigeria, it will show you that the bulk of the people are in highly miserable content. The ones in red, the fairly miserable are in the middle, including all the oil-producing states are fairly miserable, while those that are fairly prosperous are those who do not have those kind of resources. So it means that, one, revenue does not translate into prosperity, and that management of the resources is more important than even having the resource endowment itself. I think that's very clear. And so the bulk of the people are there. Now, finally, what do we do about it? I think we need to get that clear. What we have to do about it, there are two options. One, doing the same thing over and expecting different results, right? That's not going to work. That gives you what we go into the poverty trap. You will never take off. Rostos talks about the stages of growth where you take off and stay sustainable. And if you don't, you get an aborted takeoff, and then you go back into the vicious cycle of poverty. So if you do, and what you need to do, and there are two scenarios. If you do the same thing, and you will end up, there's a probability that you'll be in the same place, and you are probably guaranteed to fail. But if you take these major steps, and I just tell you that scenario A is do nothing, you are guaranteed to fail. Scenario B is revolutionary change, and you are guaranteed, you are likely, I'm not saying there's a probability that you succeed. So if you are to bet, will you bet on failure or part success? And this include major things. One, boosting investment. Two, unifying your exchange rate. Three, removal of subsidies. Four, cost-effective tariffs. In all of these things, this administration has tried to make some moves on them and are moving in that direction. But the people have to understand that you cannot make omelette without breaking eggs. You want to eat omelette, you must break eggs. And therefore, difficult days are here now, but the probability is that you take off. And when you take off, and in final analysis, the final outcome, when you break through and take off, you will have growth of 8 to 10%. You will have a GDP value of about $700 billion. You will have income per capita of $3,000 where you are $2,000 today. Your meat consumption, which is 9 kilograms per head a year, will go to 30 kilograms per head per year. Your milk consumption, which today is 8 liters a year, which means you have 1 liter of milk in a month or something, or less than a month. Passenger cars, 70 cars. Today you have 19 cars for 1,000 people. You will have 70 cars for 1,000 people. And mobile phone penetration will be 950,000 telephones for 1 million people. And finally, your personal computers will go from 6 for 1,000 to 300 to 1,000.
All right, Mr. Rewane, thank you. That's quite a bit to chew, quite a bit to
No, but I see,
reflect on
I see that Ms. Sadiku was chewing it quite.
And I'm going to start off with her, like you did. I will start off with you because he talked about investment. What does that do to our investment? You're big on that. How does that make your task? Just listening to that outline in the last 6 decades.
I always like listening to him because he takes a litmus on what the reality is. And you know, we were chatting in the room earlier. The reality is that we can continue to talk about missed opportunities. We can continue to talk about the missed opportunities, or we can talk about what we can do now. The reality is that investment interest in Nigeria actually remains strong. It's the conversion that is difficult. And we know what the issues are, the things that investors tell us. They talk about corruption. They still talk about corruption. They talk about the difficulty of doing business in the country, and the stability of government policies. And then there needs to be a coherence between our policies for attracting investments at the short end and investments at the long end.
So when you say that it remains strong, are we attracting them? Are they staying? Beyond the attraction, are they actually investing as you would want them to invest?
No, they're clearly not, which is why I said conversion. You know, if
the conversion of the interest,
the conversion of that interest is what is waning. But the fundamentals of why Nigeria is attractive, why investors invest on the continent, for instance, Nigeria remains an interesting source for investors. It's the quality of the resources that we have. You can say natural resources, and natural resources can be the things under the ground, can be the things that can grow on the ground, and the quality of the people, the entrepreneurial energy of Nigerians, because that's of real value. Then the quality, the talent, our ability to look beyond, the reality of our situation and say, I'm going to do that. We don't give up on many things, and that also has value. Then the fact that we currently have low-cost capital. We have a large number of people, but it's not just that we have a large number of people. It's the mix of that number of people. It's the fact that the majority of them are young. The median age in Nigeria is about 18 and a half years. 91% of Nigerians are under 50. Ideally, this is a consuming market, and it has the ingredients that investors look for. But then the challenges that they have with entering in the market, with staying in the market, which are multidimensional, is what makes it difficult for that conversion to happen. And in my view, it is those things that we need to work on to make sure that we, where we talk about missed opportunities in the past, we talk about the realization of some of those opportunities in the future.
Dr. Okeke, from what Mr. Rwani has said, from what Ms. Sadiko has said, you have the issue of the potential. Ever since Nigeria has been talked about, one word that has been consistent has been our potential. But then the conversion of that potential to reality has always been where we got stuck. Looking at it as it is today, is there anything different that will lead to what Mr. Rwani described as scenario B, which is the revolutionary state, the one that gives you a different outcome, which has quite a number of positive things? Do you see any of that?
Thank you very much for the question. For me, there are two things I think we should focus on, to achieve that kind of transformation he's talking about. One is that you will agree with me that over the years, successive governments have made a sing-song of what is called diversification of the economy. That as we speak now, is the economy diversified? So what do we really mean? It's not where you set up anchor borrowers scheme and you just redirect it to people who are cultivating rice and so on. You say you have diversified the economy. So there should be effective diversification of the economy so that we don't depend on oil, as a monoproduct that has been happening over the years, especially since the early 70s. So we have what is now called the petrodollar mindset, where nobody wants to do any other thing else other than to position himself to, get something from oil. You understand? So he also mentioned there should be some kind of reorientation of our mind, so that people, if you tell them to go into agric, you provide all the incentives and they go into agric effectively, and become productive in agriculture. If you now open up and go into solid mineral, that almost every state of this federation has something to offer, within their domain. You understand? Even if it calls for, constitutional amendment to empower the states to be able to exploit what is within their territory, as against what we have now. There's constitutional kind of, they are hamstrung, that they cannot exploit some of the mineral. That's one. Two, is that for the first time, there is what is now called Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy. So, which means that for the first time, this Nigeria has recognized the need for us to latch onto digitalization of the economy, to fast track things, to jumpstart, our development. And, the coronavirus that have been with us in the past 6 months or so, has shown us how digital process, can move the economy and everybody forward. That even somebody who is by the roadside frying a bole, can hook onto the digital economy, and the whole world will notice that person from that corner. You understand? So even our education we've been talking about. So there's need for us to unlearn and relearn, a new way of life. And the digital economy will now, move us to be the rest of the world. That's where the whole world is now. Okay? So that's what I have to say for now.
Mr. Nabane, I know you want to react to that, but let me just take you in the direction of young people, because we continue to hear they're the future. They're even tired of hearing that at the moment. We keep hearing job creation with every successive government, and then figures come out of how many jobs have been created versus an unemployment rate of 55.7. That's where we are right now. What do we do for the next, I won't say 6 decades, God sparing our lives, but okay, let the next 2 decades. What do we do to marry that? Because
first of all, you don't have 2 decades, right? you have 1 decade, right? And if in 30 years, China was able to move from having income per capita of less than $1,000 or $2,000 to $10,000 by boosting output and controlling their population, right? They're able to achieve that, but they went about it seriously. You can do it. So we don't have 2 decades. How are we going to do it and make it happen now, instantaneously? No quick fixes, but we have to make those decisions. The decisions, first and foremost, you have to know what you have to stop doing. Farid Zakaria says, stop doing the dumb things. Start doing the smart things, then start doing the modern things. So what are the dumb things that we have to stop? Right. So the theme of this presentation was plenty potential, little actual, resource rich, and cash poor. That's what we're talking about. You cannot have inflation rates of 13.2 going towards 14, 15, and have interest rates on your instruments at 2%. Money is a store of value. The moment I know that the money is going to lose value, I will short that money and I will start moving it to another currency. So you may know that. Secondly, government spending is not the same thing as investment. Government can help and do things. Government can spend. Government can invest with the view of even selling that to somebody else. Somebody has to take a risk and alter his position to invest. And investors do not care what you say, they watch what you do. So you must do the right things, say the right things, and convince people and earn trust. And that is key to it. And more than anything else, your currency must be aligned with your fundamentals. The value of your currency must be aligned with your fundamentals. If not, you turn your country into a speculator's paradise, right? And that's what you don't want. So, but the reality is that steps are being taken in this direction. So let us get it clear. You are moving the cumulative impact of all of these things, including the cost-reflective tariffs, the subsidy, things are important. But one final and most important issue is that there's a price and there's a price mechanism. People confuse the price with the price mechanism. The mechanism is what determines the price, while the price is an outcome, is a number. So when you say the exchange rate is 400 or 380, that's a price. The things that go into determining that price is what is important. When you say petrol is 160, it could be 140, it could be 120, but what goes into determining that price? Once you have the mechanism right, then the outcome will be right. And so people, because of vested interest, try to confuse the two. And then when you get confused, you resolve conflicts in favor of your fear. You just say, oh no, we don't want it. And then they start rioting for the wrong reasons. The truth is that you must accept. And if you listen to the president's speech today he talked about the price of petrol in Saudi Arabia and all that. That's the price. But the mechanism for determining the price is what leads to the price. And that is why you have the PPRA template and all these things. We now have to give that a chance. And then when investors know that they can determine the price at which they sell their products, they will invest. If they cannot determine the price, I don't care what you say. You can say all the things you like. People are more interested in what you do.
And because they haven't answered us anyway.
No, they are not.
Back to you for your closing remarks.
In your closing remarks, I want you to talk about this. How difficult is it, given what Mr. Iwani has just said and what Dr. Okeke has also pointed out in terms of diversification? How easy is it to attract people to come here and invest in anything other than oil and gas?
A lot of the inquiries we get actually don't relate to oil and gas. So people are interested in things outside of oil and gas. But they're concerned about, the stability of government policies. I actually think that if we get those basics right, the fundamentals that investors need, confidence is a currency that investors like. I like to say that investors obviously are adventurous people. They're like explorers. It doesn't matter how difficult the place is. If there's a prospect of a return, they'll go there. Unfortunately, the capital they carry in their pockets, in many ways, is a coward. Capital wants to go where it is courted, where it is made to feel comfortable, where it is not threatened. It is important that in the totality of our policies, and this requires all of government, even if you have an agency that says Investment Promotion Commission, it is not the work of that agency alone to get investors across the line. It is the job of all of us in government, all of us as Nigerians in reality, because we all have a role to play. So it's giving them that comfort, making them feel comfortable, not only saying the right things that they want to hear, but doing the things that we say we will do, and treating people like them the way we would like them to expect to be treated. Investors don't wait to be in trouble themselves or to be, they look at the way you treat other investors and they make deductions from there. Investors don't care as much about what we say, they care about what we do. And that's where they draw their decisions.
Mr. Okeke, you've been giving advice for years. If you were to advise, Mr. Rabani says we don't have 2 decades, we have one. We have now.
We have now, really, just now. So what, in 4 short sentences, to those who are listening, and I know they are listening because a lot of them were part of this program earlier.
Yeah.
So just tell them 4 things that they must do now.
Thank you. One of the first things everybody must do is to join the digital revolution. Now, no matter your level in the society, join the digital revolution, because we have what is now called the new normal. We cannot go back to the old normal, even if there's post-COVID life, and there's going to be post-COVID life. Do you understand? That is 1. 2 is that whatever you are doing now, wherever you are now, make sure that you increase your productivity by joining the digital world and digital life. You understand? And the digital space is there for everybody to join. You understand? Another thing we have to make up our mind is to join a kind of, there's need for mental, psychological reorientation. You understand? For us to, accept the reality of our life now. And just like Riwane said, government is coming up with what ought to have been done before, and all of us are seeing it as a very tough, decision. But that is what we have to live with for us to, operate in the new normal. If we remain in the old order of subsidy this, subsidy that, subsidy, how far can we go with that? So there's need for that kind of mindset change. Do you understand?
Number 4.
The other one is that I presented a paper sometime in May where we said Nigeria without oil. That's another mindset that everybody has to create, Nigeria without oil. Because what are we facing today is the reality that the price of oil has crashed. And over the years, why has this economy been going through vicissitudes of life as a country? It's the ups and downs, the vagaries of oil production and oil pricing, the international market. All these things are not within our control. So we have to begin to have a new mindset that there's no oil. And so we face the reality of our life and time.
Let us thank you very much. As much as what you said sounded very, quite nice, but our life without oil would be quite scary from those who will be listening right now.
But that's why they've said diversify, so that we don't get afraid.
I'm not talking of myself, really, but
generally
those who are listening. Mr. Rwani, thank you so much for your time today. Dr. Okeke, Ms. Sadiku, thank you so much for coming in. And let us say that we wish you in particular the best of luck. And of course, Mr. Rwani as well, you advised the president. So let's hope that all these pans out well. Thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you.
And happy Independence Anniversary.
Yes.
Thank you.
Happy independence.
Happy
Thank you. Happy
independence.
Independence.
We'll take a break, and when we come back, we're moving on straight to our next segment, something very important. So please stay with us.